Evidence of Native Americans has been found in arrowheads and spearheads near the lake shores. However, many historians believe our area of Lake Pleasant and Speculator was the hunting and fishing grounds of the Native Americans living in the Mohawk Valley. The first settlers arrived around the time of 1795. This area was a part of the town of Mayfield in Montgomery County. The inexpensive land was offered by New York City landowners to induce settlement. The heavily forested, majestic mountains, the abundant game of food and furs, and the numerous lakes and streams full of fish awaited these first settlers.
A few hardy pioneers came to the wilderness, cleared the land, and built self-sufficient farms. They built grist mills and sawmills for local use. All seemed good except for the heavy snows, and the lack of good roads meant they were isolated in the winter and spring.
A short, cool summer growing season meant adapting their farming to crops that would survive to feed themselves and their livestock. Sheep did well on the rocky hillsides, and cloth was manufactured in many homes. Wild animals such as wolves and coyotes, bobcats, and mountain lions had to be dealt with. Apple orchards were planted with some success.
A few mills to craft wooden ware and tools were built. Some found income from shingle making, and nearly every building was roofed with these wooden shingles. Small dairies supplied butter, cheese, and milk to neighbors, and later to logging camps and the large hotels.
Still, development was slow and there was much hardship. Many left to be closer to their families, to farmland that was richer, and to jobs that offered a steady income that could be found.
Several small settlements, separated by distance and the lack of passable roads, soon became separate towns. The large area was impractical to govern, and Montgomery County Courthouse was 60 miles away. In 1805, the town of Wells was established, which included the area of present Lake Pleasant.
In 1812, the town of Lake Pleasant was established with about 300 residents. It was a large area with scattered settlements and far-reaching boundaries. It extended north indefinitely and to the west to the Herkimer County line. Hamilton County became a provisional county in 1816, but since it lacked a sufficient number of residents, it was counted with Montgomery County until 1837.
Lake Pleasant later gave up some of its land to other towns, such as Morehouse in 1835, Arietta in 1836, Long Lake in 1837, Gilman in 1839, and Indian Lake in 1858. The town of Gilman stretched 40 miles from Wells to Long Lake and was soon recognized as impractical, and the land was annexed to neighboring towns in 1860.
Gradually, settlement continued and two small communities developed, about 4 miles apart, near the lake called Lake Pleasant. In 1844, Hezekiah Sage sought to develop a town called Sageville at the head of the lake. The county buildings were to be located here, and there was already a hotel, a store, and a few houses. In 1897, Sageville was changed back to Lake Pleasant.
The small settlement at the foot of the lake remained Lake Pleasant until 1864, when Joel Newton built a small store and hotel in the center of town and secured a post office with the name of Newton's Corners. At that time, Page Hill and Page Street were included in Newton's Corners.
Joel Newton's structure burned in 1870. In 1872, the Newton Corners Post Office was reopened in Satterlee's store. Henry Dunning built a hotel in 1882 where Newton's had been, and the post office was moved there. In 1896, the community received a new name, Speculator, after the prominent mountain seen across the lake.
In the beginning, small sawmills provided lumber for local use, but after the Civil War, a growing nation needed lumber, and large lumber companies were formed and lumber and paper mills were built near the Glens Falls area. At first, logging was prevalent along the upper Hudson River, as rivers were used to float the logs to the mills.
Later, logging operations moved into Lake Pleasant, and the Sacandaga River was used to float logs to Glens Falls, as the state of New York designated rivers as public highways for moving logs. Eventually, as the roads were built and improved over the years, trucks transported the logs.
There were a few small logging operations in this area that sold their logs to the larger companies. Many local farmers found winter employment with these small companies, as well as supplying the companies with potatoes, meat, and dairy products, and hay and feed for the horses.
The lumber companies bought large parcels of land for their timber. Some of this land was later abandoned and became state land. This was the beginning of the Adirondack Park as designated in 1892. Some of the land is still owned by the large lumber companies, and the logging industry is still carried on today.
Around the 1850s, city sportsmen began to come to the mountains to hunt, fish, and enjoy expeditions into the deep woods. They hired local men who knew the area to be their guides. The guides provided food and crude lean-tos for shelter. Hunting shanties were later widely used.
Growth escalated between the 1880s and the early 1900s. With the sportsmen came their whole families to use the many hotels and boarding houses in Lake Pleasant and Speculator. Hotels like the Lake Pleasant Inn, Sturgis House, Lake Pleasant House, Letson House, Hamilton Inn, Lawler's Inn, and Osborne Inn. These families spent their summers enjoying the mountain hospitality and fresh air.
Private summer camps and cottages were built, and along came the established family and children's camps. Camps such as Camp Seatag in 1914, Camp Conjamook in 1915, Camp of the Woods in 1917, the Gloversville YMCA Camp Agamy in 1923, Deerfoot Lodge in 1929, Camp Fowler in 1954, and Camp Tapawingo in 1958 were established around the shores of the local lakes.
In 1925, a few ambitious and industrious business leaders felt they needed to update and modernize their facilities. Speculator was a booming mecca for tourists. With the support of voters, the village of Speculator was incorporated with a mayor and 2 trustees, which later changed to 4 trustees. The village purchased the small water system of Dexter Slack and expanded it. The village had a generating plant and water wheel installed at Christine Falls, and by 1926 they had electricity.
1926 was also the year heavyweight boxer Gene Tunney arrived to train for his championship fight with Jack Dempsey. At least 10 other boxers followed him to train in Speculator. Besides boxing, there was the Hershey hockey team, and some of the 1930 USA Winter Olympians trained in Speculator.
In the mid-1920s, the Winter Sports Club was organized to promote winter sports in Lake Pleasant and Speculator. There were at least 5 ski areas, a toboggan run, ski jump, and skating could be had in our area.
The town of Lake Pleasant continues to rely on tourism today. The town is surrounded by the New York State Forest Preserve, which offers many recreational activities for the young and old. The area is the center of activities such as camping, hiking, swimming, fishing, cross-country and downhill skiing, snowmobiling, tennis, basketball, softball, biking, and so much more. We hope everyone enjoys the bicentennial activities as Lake Pleasant celebrates 200 years as a small town that lives big.
Visit our Historical Society's website at www.lakespec.wordpress.com. Also look for the book Lake Pleasant and Speculator in the Adirondacks, written by our local historians Bev Hoffman and Ann Weaver.